Before we start this episode, I'm gonna give you a few seconds to make all your "oh, all laptops are folding laptops" joke. You good? Alright, because on today's episode of the New Phone Show, I have a very special guest. Jajang! This is the Asus Zenbook 17 Fold OLED, and it is magical. Wait, before we continue with the video, I have an important announcement to make. Search Engine is hiring! We are looking for driven, like-minded individuals to join our growing team. But wait, you might be wondering, why would I want to work here? Well, let me show you. You get access to incredible studios like this and all of this cool equipment.
Hey, I'm trying to work here. Can you get out of here? What the?
We even offer a grooming allowance. Yeah? No? Okay. Even coffee from our local kopitiam. Thanks, Cherry. So, are you interested? Hit the link below to see what positions we have available. I personally never bought into the whole idea of productivity even on a folding smartphone, like stuff like the Galaxy Z Fold, right? That to me is like, it just feels like an inefficient smartphone. You have a small phone when it's folded with a cover screen that's too tall, and then when you open it, you have a really small tablet, which if you're talking about productivity, it's just sort of like, I don't think it's that much better than a smartphone, honestly. But when it comes to the laptop form factor, this is something that I think is a lot more interesting if you want to do actual work. Now, my first experience with a folding laptop was the ThinkPad X Fold. Now, I saw that when I was, I believe, in CES, and it was interesting. It was basically a really huge screen that can fold in the middle, and then you can use it as sort of like a laptop. It also came with a detachable keyboard that you could slip between the folds to sort of act as the, gap hider, or to make the folding flush. But the thing about that product was, when I saw it, it was very, very incomplete. It wasn't like something that was in production at that point, but the notion of which was interesting. But I think the folding laptop that really captured my imagination was the Microsoft Surface Neo. Now, obviously this product never saw the light of day, but the idea that was put forward was very interesting. Yes, it is not technically one screen that folds in half, it's like two screens with a hinge, but the way that Microsoft implemented the technology, I think, was the most interesting. So obviously it's like basically you have two sort of like tablets stuck together with a hinge that then you could fold and unfold, and if you want to use it flat or whatever. But the thing that was interesting was that they also came with a keyboard, but the keyboard uses the screen as part of the interfacing experience. So for example, the keyboard was only half the screen size, so you could move it to the top part of the screen and you could use the bottom part of the screen as your touchpad, or move the keyboard down so then you get a secondary display on your secondary display. So I thought that was really cool. But again, that product never saw the light of day. I don't think I ever saw another ThinkPad X1 either. But today, we're seeing the next best thing, or the most complete version of this folding laptop idea, and it is the Asus Zenbook 17 Fold OLED. Not a great name, I have to say. Not a big fan of that. But this thing is pretty incredible. So the first thing that you need to know is that this is a laptop, okay? So you can open it up like this, and there you have it. That is the laptop form factor, and you can type on it, right? It's got a keyboard. It's like any other laptop. You got your trackpad here, If I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't have guessed that it was just another laptop. In fact, in laptop form factor, it looks like a Sony Vaio, one of those business laptops from way back in the day. What makes this special is when you take off the keyboard, ta-da! It's all screen. Seriously, this whole laptop, this whole thing is just one massive screen. Obviously, the idea here is that with one device, you can have a massive 17.3-inch display, and it's massive, by the way. But when you want it to be portable, you just go like that, you slap the keyboard on, and now it's like, I think it's about a 12-inch laptop, which, yeah, it has a tiny footprint, and that's incredible because let's say you just want to pack it down, you just fold your screen down and that's all you have to do. This is like, I think the size of about an iPad, like an iPad Pro, a bit smaller, obviously because it's like 12 inches, right? Just stick it in your bag. And then when you reach Starbucks, you just come up, open this thing up, take the keyboard off, use the built-in kickstand, boom. And there you have the incredible experience. And it's a nice screen too, okay? Asus did not skimp out on this. This is like a legit, really nice OLED display. It's Quad HD Plus, if I'm not mistaken. It's 2560 by 1920. So it is quite a square aspect ratio, which I personally prefer because it's easier to have two windows side by side. So I write a lot, and that's usually how I do it. Writing on one side, reference on the other side, having a tall aspect ratio is great. And it just looks really great. Obviously, the first thing that I was very worried about this display was the crease, right? But as you can see from this camera up here, you can't see the crease. When the screen is on, when you're using it, like you can really, it just disappears. But obviously if you try and look for it, like if I try and use the light, there you go, you can see sort of like it warping, that's the crease. It's a pretty big crease. But I have to say, when you're using it on this kind of screen, you just don't see it. And unlike a smartphone where if you're scrolling, you can sort of feel the crease as you're scrolling, you don't really do that with this device, right? You're using the keyboard to type, you're using the touchpad to move around and navigate like a normal computer. This just becomes a monitor, and if you don't interact with it, the crease basically disappears. Now, obviously, when I first saw this laptop in the office, I was a bit skeptical at first because, you know, looking at it over Raymond's shoulder, it was like, oh, okay, I could see the screen. It didn't look incredibly practical. The whole setup looked a little bit more janky than I would have liked. But now, having used it for about a day, I have to say it really changes the laptop experience. Like, because, you know, I come to work, I set up my laptop, and then I don't really move it around that much. It's mostly in this form factor, and having so much real estate and such a nice screen is actually incredible. You know, you can just work on it, and then if like, let's say I need to hop into a meeting, it's just flip, stick the keyboard on, and it's instantly back into a laptop form factor. Pick it up and go. It's just so, it's sort of like the idea that people are trying to push with DeX and where you use your smartphone and stuff like that, just connect to a monitor, right? This is just like you're bringing around a really big monitor that also happens to be a computer, and that's just awesome when it comes to doing work or being productive. It's like, I really feel like this should be the direction we're heading in. But although I like the idea, the product itself isn't obviously super incredible. For starters, the specs, right? This device has a 17.3-inch really nice display, but the internals are pretty much the same as like your typical workhorse laptop, like your office laptop. There's no dedicated graphics card, there's no super powerful HQ or like, you know, gaming processor inside here. It's not a super powerful device. Now, obviously, I won't go into specs and performance because I'll save all of that for Raymond's review, but I can tell you it performs very similarly to my very own Zenbook, which I use for work, which is fine if you're not planning to game or do like heavy video editing on this thing. But if you look at the form factor and you look at sort of like the equipment that this device comes with, it was not meant to do that, right? If you look at the I/O, you get a headphone jack, a USB Type-C port, and that is pretty much it. And that's not the only sort of like hardware thing that I feel like is kind of like about this thing. For starters, you may notice that the bezels are absolutely massive, especially for a laptop in 2022. Like when you're using it in laptop mode, it's so hard to ignore the massive bezels. Like this really looks like it came straight out of like 2010 or something like that. You know, especially nowadays when you have laptop bezels that are this thin, this really stands out. And then there's also just the overall sort of like jankiness of this laptop. You can tell that Asus had to do a couple of things just to make this thing work, or had to make a couple of sacrifices. So although from here it looks really like pretty decent and well put together, when you flip it around, it's sort of like, this is kind of weird. This whole thing, this is kind of weird. Like look at that, it's sort of all creased up already. And this soft piece is here to protect probably what looks like the hinge mechanism. But there is a huge gap. There is a huge gap between the cloth bit and the rest of the laptop. And in my experience with folding devices, you do not want a huge gap anywhere near your hinge. So yeah, you have this mechanism, which again, same problem that I noticed on the ThinkPad X1 Fold. I think it had a very similar sort of setup, and that makes everything kind of like really janky. And you also have stuff like the placement of the feet, right? So for example, there are like 2 feet here, and there are 2 feet here. So obviously you're supposed to use it like, it's like that. And then for like that. And then you have your ports at the top. Sure, that makes sense. But one of the form factors that it allows you to use it in is portrait. So that is something that is, I think, cool. This is great if you want to scroll stuff like Twitter, Reddit, or like just any long document. This is great. But as you can tell, there's no real way for me to hold it up. The stand is here, but it will not hold this thing up. So according to Raymond, there is a way that you can use the box that this device came in as part of your stand. So you sort of like stick it in and then it becomes, but that's just sort of like a, that feels like an afterthought solution lah. And even this hinge, I mean like, come on, what is this? What is this? Huh? This is like a flap, which is very hard to tell sometimes which side you're supposed to open because there's no like notch. So yeah, this whole thing is a little bit janky. And I haven't even started talking about the keyboard. This thing is probably one of the worst keyboard experiences I've ever had. First of all, it's super flat and there's no way for you to raise it up, so it's not very comfortable to type on a long time. And the trackpad is absolutely horrible. I don't know if our unit is broken. It could be broken because my Asus laptop has a pretty decent trackpad. But this one skips all the time and, you know, it makes a terrible noise when you click. So yeah, this feels kind of really like an afterthought. But I think the final nail in the coffin for me is the fact that this is actually just a Bluetooth keyboard. It's a Bluetooth experience. There's a switch on the side. That means that there are no pogo connectors or any kind of like pins or whatever at the bottom that lets you connect this to this device. Instead, it is just a magnet. There's a small little magnet that's at the bottom here that sort of like hooks it up, and when you put it on, it detects and it switches into laptop mode. But downside is you have to charge your keyboard separately from the laptop. And you have to turn it off when you're done using it. Otherwise, the battery's gonna be dead if you leave it like over the weekend or something like that. And that's apparently a problem that Raymond has run into a lot because he always forgets to turn it off. And I can totally see why. Because like, why wouldn't, like, it's these little things, right, that sort of make this whole experience feel like you're taking part in a beta test program, not buying an actual laptop. But every time I look at this screen and just think about the fact that I can fit this in my regular sort of sling bag, it just amazes me. Like, it's what a beta program to be a part of, if I were to continue that analogy, right? Because this is incredible. Like, it takes the whole laptop experience to the next level, and I really have enjoyed using it as a daily driver. Partly probably because the screen is just really nice as well. It's pretty cool to think that if, let's say, they took this concept and then they somehow sort of ran with it, like if everybody started doing this, like I think I wouldn't mind that, honestly. This looks like an incredible way to work in the future. But obviously this is not a beta program. This is an actual laptop that they are selling to consumers, and they're selling to consumers for a lot of money. This device is priced at 14,999 ringgit, and I don't think I need to tell you, you can buy a lot of things for that money and a lot more powerful things to boot. But the experience here is really what you're paying for. You're not paying for the performance or the speakers, which by the way, terrible on these. You're not paying to have a whole bunch of ports. You're paying for this folding form factor, this experience of being able to have a 17-inch display and then immediately switch into a 12-inch laptop that doesn't take up more space than an iPad Pro. And I think that that is just absolutely the way that I want to see, or at least I want to see more laptops do this, right? The only thing for me for this device is Asus, find a way to make this 870 grams. And you might have your first customer in me. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. That is a quick look at the Asus Zenbook 17 Fold OLED. It is truly a really fun thing that I've used. Like honestly, like this is just, it's just so, like I feel like one day was not enough for me to spend time with using this device. But obviously it's not something that I think everybody should go out and buy right now, right? It's really expensive. It is a little bit very janky, and it's also not incredibly powerful. But again, it's offering an experience that I think is really, really hard to find anywhere else. I don't even know if ThinkPad, like I don't even know if Lenovo still makes the ThinkPad X Fold. I know they hyped it up a lot back in the day, but I haven't seen one in person. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this laptop? Let me know in the comment section below. Would you buy something like this if, let's say, it was lighter or thinner or, you know, more accessible in the price point? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. But yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that notification bell icon, and we're also on all the social media platforms, so follow us there. But our home on the internet will be at sirchinshaw.com. Till the next video, I'll see you then. Bye!